obvious content warning. There's going to be sexual harassment in this video, and there's going to be an immense amount of misogyny from people you expect not to see it from when I talk about the aftermath, okay? Let's play strip poker. End quote. I should have been shocked by the governor's crude comment, but I wasn't. We were flying home from an October 2017 event in Western New York on his taxpayer-funded jet. He was seated facing me, so close our knees almost touched. His press aide was to my right, and a state trooper behind us. That's exactly what I was thinking, I responded sarcastically and awkwardly. I tried to play it cool, but in that moment I realized just how acquiescent I had become. Governor Andrew Cuomo has created a culture within his administration where sexual harassment and bullying is so pervasive that it is not only condoned, but expected. His inappropriate behavior toward women was an affirmation that he liked you, that you must be doing something right. He used intimidation to silence his critics, and if you dared to speak up, you would face consequences. That's why I panicked on the morning of December 13th. While enjoying a weekend with my husband and 6-year-old daughter, I spontaneously decided to share a small part of the truth I had hidden for so long, in shame, and never planned to disclose. The night before, a former staffer for Cuomo confided to me that she too had been the subject of the government's workplace harassment. Her story mirrored my own. Seeing his name floated as a potential candidate for U.S. Attorney General, the highest law enforcement official in the land, set me off. In a few tweets, I told the world what a few close friends, family members, and my therapist had known for years. Andrew Cuomo abused his power as governor to sexually harass me, just as he had done with so many other women. As messages from journalists buzzed on my phone, I laid in bed, unable to move. I finally had decided to speak up, but at what cost? Parts of a supposed confidential personnel file, which I've never seen, were leaked to the media in an effort to smear me. The governor's loyalists called around town, asking about me. Last week, Assemblymember Ron Kim spoke out publicly about the intimidation and abuse he has faced from Governor Cuomo and his aides. As Mayor de Blasio remarked, the bullying is nothing new. There are many more of us, but most are too afraid to speak out. So right here, I'm going to take a pause here. There is nothing surprising in hearing from somebody who has worked for Andrew Cuomo that he abused his power, that he tried to use intimidation tactics to silence people who opposed him or criticized him or said anything bad about him. These are empirically provable, demonstrable patterns of behavior in Andrew Cuomo's career. I'm compelled to tell my story because no woman should feel forced to hide their experiences of workplace intimidation, harassment, and humiliation, not by the governor or anyone else. True. I expect the governor and his top aides will attempt to further disparage me, just as they've done with Assemblymember Kim. They'd lose their jobs if they didn't protect him. That's how his administration works. I know, because I was a part of it. I joined state government in 2015 as a vice president at Empire State Development. I was quickly promoted to chief of staff at the State Economic Development Agency. The news of my appointment prompted a warning from a friend who served as an executive with an influential civic engagement organization. Quote, "Be careful around the governor." My first encounter with the governor came at a January 6, 2016 event at Madison Square Garden to promote the new Pennsylvania Station Farley Complex project. After his speech, he stopped to talk to me. I was new on the job and surprised by how much attention he paid me. My boss soon informed me that the governor had a, quote, crush on me. It was an uncomfortable but all too familiar feeling, the struggle to be taken seriously by a powerful man who tied my worth to my body and my appearance. This is... Obviously, it's worse when it's by powerful men, but women deal with this every single day in the workplace, and they deal with it especially in politics, where power is such an important commodity. Like, literally yesterday, Emma Vigeland, co-host of The Majority Report, who has been, a stellar reporter on the Young Turks for the entirety of her career. She's very young, right? Like, she's my age. I think she's a little bit younger than me. So, like, she's 27 or something like that, 26, 27. And She has done 4 or 5 years of stellar reporting. She is brilliant. She is like incredibly talented, very, very, very intelligent, and incisive and assertive. In the sense of like, she has never hidden her opinions to look more amicable. She has never foregone the opportunity to ask tough questions. She has been very, very, like, she's never withheld criticism in the way that she questioned people that she disagreed with. And she's a brilliant investigative reporter and a great media commentator with a lot of really insightful things to say about electoral politics and about power in general. And she brings a fantastic and much needed voice to the Majority Report of, kind of, there's a middle ground between Sam Cedar, who is a social democrat, and kind of all of the other co-hosts of the show and the contributors, most of whom are socialists. And there is a lot of ground in between them that I think she covers brilliantly. And someone literally called into the show and made a really inappropriate comment to her that I know that they meant as a compliment, but it was so devaluing because it was a comment on her, not on her physical appearance, but her status as a woman, and it was a very sexualizing comment. And it's incredible that, like, I deal with not this particular, anyone who's ever dealt with a deprivation of their agency or a belittling of an important part of their identity understands what this is like. But it is like 10 times worse when you're in the position of somebody who is being aggressively sexualized while trying to operate in a professional place, because your socioeconomic status is being threatened, because if you speak up about it, you can lose your job, in which case you lose out monetarily, like you won't be able to support your family unless you don't complain about sexual harassment, which is a huge problem. And the second issue is that your physical safety is threatened, because when people over-sexualize you against your own consent, what they're basically saying is that you don't have agency or control over your own sexual agency, which at that point, then you are under physical threat, because if someone decides, I'm going to disrespect your sexual agency and sexualize you at times where you don't consent to it, that means that, like, I can make advances on you whether or not you want me to. And in a species and society where men are physically stronger than women, that is a physical threat to women. So these are things that you have to be conscious of when you talk to women. And that if you're in the workplace and you're making a comment about a woman that has to do with her appearance, has to do with, your emotional relationship with her, has to do with, even expressing any kind of attraction to a woman, like in the workplace. Like, what you are doing is you are essentially taking what is supposed to be a professional rapport, or, even taking it easier and saying, like, yes, you have a personal relationship with a woman that you work with. At the very least, anything regarding your personal relationship should be expressed to the woman outside of work, right? So when Emma Vigeland is hosting the Majority Report and you call into the Majority Report, your question should be political, right? Sometimes the question's about sports. And even that is kind of weird, because, like, I'm listening to a politics podcast. I don't want to hear about sports. Nobody who's listening wants to hear about sports. Why are you coaxing the hosts to talk to you about sports? It's even worse when you're doing it and you're putting the host who's having this conversation with you on the spot, engaging this aspect of her identity that she has never implied that she wants to share with you. And you're putting her in a position that's really uncomfortable, where she either has to call you out on it and, risk looking like a quote-unquote bitch to a bunch of her fans who might not realize, no, it's the caller who's being inappropriate, or she just has to sit there and take it on the chin, right? Neither of those is an acceptable position to be in. So that's just kind of this is something that, like, this is ubiquitous. And if you interact with women in the workplace in any capacity, like, you have a responsibility to understand this and consider it, and be cognizant as a man, as a cis masculine person, of how your interactions with women in the workplace, or just generally, like, anyone who's not a cis man in the workplace has probably dealt with some semblance of deprivation of sexual agency, right? And yeah, so be conscious of that. Okay. So right here, like, bam, like this is very inappropriate. Stephanie Benton, director of the governor's offices, told me in an email on December 14, 2016, that the governor suggested I look up images of Lisa Shields, his rumored former girlfriend, because we, quote, could be sisters, end quote, and I was the, quote, better-looking sister, end quote. This is so creepy. The governor began calling me Lisa in front of colleagues. It was degrading. And here is the screenshot of the email. Stephanie Benton, director of governor's offices. He said, look up Lisa Shields. You could be sisters, except you're the better-looking sister. Obviously, check this out. Lindsey Boylan, chief of staff. It was a great trip, particularly interesting at the GM plant this AM. Thanks for all of your help. Relay my thanks to the governor for letting me join. Hope to see you one of these after work. So, like, even this, like, hope to see you one of these is after work. This is like, hey, let's get drinks. She's saying this to Stephanie Benton, right? It's not like she's even saying anything personally with regards to the governor. And if she did, it would be considered inappropriate because the governor is the governor and she's a staffer, right? Like, it would be considered inappropriate for a staffer to make any kind of social advances on a superior, right? This is fellow staffers like making social comments to each other that are clearly like platonic. That's completely separate from, say, Stephanie Benton literally saying like, here's this remark completely with regards to your appearance that the governor asked me to relay to you. And if she doesn't, and chances are Stephanie Benton probably is hating her life right now. She's probably thinking, this is really inappropriate. I hate that I work for this man, but if I don't do what he says, I'm finished in New York politics, right? Which is not to say that it excuses her being a part of it, but, you know, Boylan has said so herself. Like, the position that these people are in because of how much power that Cuomo has, I don't envy them, right? I complained to friends that the governor would go out of his way to touch me on my lower back, arms, and legs. His senior staff began keeping tabs on my whereabouts. He is a sexist pig and you should avoid being alone with him. My mother texted me on November 4th, 2016. The governor's senior staff member emailed my supervisor about my whereabouts. So this is someone from the governor's staff emailing Boylan's supervisor. She's going to be at the Slats or Syats in Albany, but it will be hard for her to concentrate. Oh, wait, no. Hey, Howard, is your chief of staff going tomorrow? Just got that question. Ostensibly from Governor Cuomo. Very weird that, like, so Howard Zemsky is her supervisor. Obviously, Empire State Development has worked with the governor's office, obviously. And so ESD has to work with the governor's office. Howard Zemsky is presumably the person that Cuomo is talking to, and Boylan and, say, you know, Boylan, Jill DeRosier, Stephanie Benton, these are people who are assisting their respective leads, right? So you've got the leader of a bureaucracy such as Howard Zemsky or a senior higher up who is coordinating staff. It's really strange for like an elected official and like a cabinet official or a bureaucratic lead. They are supposed to interact with each other because they're the ones like coordinating everything, right? That's the purpose of a cabinet secretary, of a governor, of a mayor, of the honcho, right? It's really weird for a governor to start interacting with the staff individually of those people, because that's what your staff is for. Your staffs are supposed to coordinate so that professionally they can get stuff done, so that you can coordinate with the lead and you can talk to them and everything is going as it's supposed to. When you're talking to somebody else's staff, it's typically a very inefficient thing to do. It just never happens, right? It's not a status issue. It's not about status. It's not about they're beneath me. It's just about like our staffs coordinate so that we can get work done together. And that's the reason that we were put in the positions we have. So it's really strange for any reason for Governor Cuomo to be curious as to where a staffer for someone he's working with is going to be. It is very easy to infer, and it's very difficult to think of a counter hypothesis for why he would be interested in the location of somebody he's working with at Empire State Development's chief of staff. Like, it's so weird for him to wonder where she's going to be, unless the narrative is literally, unless the narrative holding true is that he is inappropriately sexually interested in her. Like, or something of that line. There has to be something that is not in a professional capacity, right? If we were going to be really, 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 really charitable to Andrew Cuomo, one reason he would say, is your chief of staff going tomorrow, is to ask her not to come because he's not comfortable being around her, right? That's the counter narrative. But the truth is that, like, between Lindsey Boylan, whom I have interacted with her political career since 2019, and whom I've never had a reason to doubt in terms of her political integrity, and like has never given me a reason to believe that she would just flat out lie about stuff, versus Andrew Cuomo, who has a long patterned history of intimidation, abuse of power, and just generally being a scumbag and an authoritarian. Like, quite frankly, like, in a he said, she said scenario, like, it's not just I believe accusers, which I generally do. I generally err on the side of believing accusers. I even did it with Tara Reid for the beginning until there were significant questions about her credibility that I found compelling. In this case with the he said, she said, he has so little credibility, and she has, like, virtually no reason for me not to believe her, that it's just like, I'm going to believe the narrative that I'm seeing here, unless there are proper receipts countering it. This is why I don't trust government. This is his executive deputy asking if I would be at the event. This is from the governor to my boss. Crazy. What is the event? Any reason that he would think you need to be there? There is no reason. He was asking because he wanted to see me. Although as chief of staff I go with my boss, he was just being creepy. He has a crush on me. And this is her mother. He is a sexist pig and you should avoid being alone with him. Okay. The governor's behavior made me nervous, but I didn't truly fear him until December 2016. Senior state employees gathered at the Empire State Plaza Convention Center in Albany to celebrate the holidays and our year's work. After his remarks, the government spotted me in a by the way, this is going to be like really, really, really like, this is going to escalate a lot. So again, reiterating content warning, not just sexual harassment. This is like borderline sexual assault. This is an inappropriate and unconsented sexual advance. After his remarks, the government spotted me in a room filled with hundreds of people waiting to shake his hand. As he began to approach me, I excused myself from coworkers and moved upstairs to a more distant area of the party. Minutes later, I received a call from an unlisted number. It was the governor's body person. He told me to come to the Capitol because the governor wanted to see me. Made my way to the underground connection that linked the plaza to the Capitol. As the black wrought iron elevator took me to the second floor, I called my husband. I told him I was afraid of what might happen. That was unlike me. I was never afraid. I exited the elevator to see the body person waiting for me. He walked me down the hall of governors. Are there cameras there? I asked him. I remembered my mother's text warning the month before. I worried that I would be left alone with the governor. I didn't know why I was there or how it would end. I was escorted into the governor's office, past the desks of administrative assistants, and into a room with a large table and historical artifacts. The door closed behind me. It was my first time in his Albany office. The governor entered the room from another door. We were alone. As he showed me around, I tried to maintain my distance. He paused at one point and smirked as he showed off a cigar box. He told me that President Clinton had given to him while he served as the Secretary of HUD. The 2-decade-old reference to President Clinton's affair with Monica Lewinsky was not lost on me. The governor must have sensed my fear because he finally let me out of the office. I tried to rationalize this incident in my head. At least he didn't touch me. That made me feel safer. His inappropriate gestures became more frequent. He gave roses to female staffers on Valentine's Day and arranged to have one delivered to me, the only one on my floor. Another aside. One thing that a lot of men will do, and this isn't always a bad thing, one thing that a lot of men will do in order to make an advance on somebody in a situation where it doesn't necessarily seem appropriate is it's the, oh, I'm doing this thing with or for everyone, and I was wondering if you'd like to join. And done in situations of kind of, not gray, but like, towing the line of what's appropriate in order to see if there is a signal reception is actually like an okay thing to do in terms of like, hey, I'm having this like get together and it's just going to be a couple people. I'm not sure who's going to show up, but I was wondering if you'd like to come along. And you can slip in something like, there's a, if you do come, there's a good chance it might just be the two of us. It might just be multiple people. And what you do is you're creating a context of like, you're saying to somebody, hey, I'm giving you basically the option of hanging out with me in a large group if you're interested in me as friends, or knowing that there's the potential that it would be just the two of us hanging out, you can also come like individually and it could be just the two of us. And knowing it's just the two of us and you're okay with that is sending me a signal that you're okay hanging out with me one-on-one, right? So this is a kind of a PUA tactic, but like used responsibly. Like it can actually be a good way to escalate a relationship while giving the other person the option to give you a signal saying like, I'm comfortable with this, but not this. So if I was to ask, I actually did this with a person that I liked. I did this with a person that I liked for my birthday, which was I invited them to a very small party I was having that was largely only close friends. And I said, hey, I'm having a little get together and I'm not sure who's coming, but like it's a bunch of our mutual friends. I'm inviting a bunch of our mutual friends and I'm inviting some close friends as well. And what I was trying to do is I was trying to open the... I gave the person the opportunity to say... for them to say who of our mutual acquaintances will be there. And that's kind of a signal to me of like, I like you as a person. I already knew they liked me as a person, but it was an opportunity for them to say like, I like you enough to come to a party if there are mutual acquaintances so that when you're entertaining other people, I can hang out with other people. But I'm not necessarily sure I'm comfortable being the only person, with you being the only person that I know there while the center of attention, right? And giving opportunities to establish those boundaries is that's actually a good idea. And it makes it less uncomfortable for people to say no. And instead of saying no, they're establishing boundaries in a more positive way, which makes it more comfortable for them, more comfortable for you, win-win-win all around, right? This is not one of those cases, because the other thing you can do is you can use that to basically cover your ass when you want to make inappropriate advances on people in areas where you shouldn't be doing. So he gave roses to female staffers on Valentine's Day and arranged to have one delivered to me. This is not a case of that. This is more a case of I want plausible deniability that I was performing targeted harassment on a targeted harassment against a female staffer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give roses to all my female staffers, which in itself is kind of a weird thing for a male governor with that much power to do. I don't think you should do that. It seems like you're farming. Hey, can you look at this article, This World These Days, Why Raising the Minimum Wage is Beneficial? I cannot right now. I am doing a deep dive on these allegations. But I'll take a look. Wait, I've already looked at this. This article is purple for me, so I've already looked at this article. But I might take a look later. So this is the issue: is that like there are things you can do in order to make in order to pursue relationships with women in ways that would make them less uncomfortable, and they border on PUA tactics because they oftentimes toe the line of sexual versus platonic. The problem with these tactics is it's all about the intention and the way that you approach it, because you are towing gray area and you're towing lines. You can either be doing it in order to give people the option to establish boundaries with you in a comfortable and safe way, or you can be doing it literally so that you have plausible deniability, so that when someone calls you out, you can gaslight the hell out of them and be like, whoa, no. Like, I would have done that for anyone, right? Like, you have to be very careful about this kind of stuff. In this case, he's the governor of New York, all right? don't give roses to female staffers. The only reason he's doing it is that he can get away with it because he's the leader of the Democratic Party. He has so much power. A signed photograph of the governor appeared in my closed-door office while I was out. These were not so subtle reminders of the governor exploiting the power dynamic with the women around him. True. In 2018, I was promoted to Deputy Secretary for Economic Development and Special Advisor to the government. I initially turned the job down, not because I didn't want the responsibility or work, but because I didn't want to be near him. I finally accepted the position at the governor's insistence with one requirement. I would keep my old agency office and remain on a separate floor from him and his inner circle. The governor's pervasive harassment extended beyond just me. He made unflattering comments about the weight of female colleagues. He ridiculed them about their romantic relationships and significant others. He said that the reasons that men get women were money and power, end quote. I tried to excuse his behavior. I told myself, it's only words. But that changed after a one-on-one briefing with the governor to update him on the economic and infrastructure projects. We were in his New York City office on 3rd Avenue as I got up to leave and walked toward an open door. Here's what it gets very real. He stepped in front of me and kissed me on the lips. I was in shock, but I kept walking. I left past the desk of Stephanie Benton. I was scared she had seen the kiss. The idea that someone might think that I held my high-ranking position because of the governor's crush on me was more demeaning than the kiss itself. And here it gets to the second issue for extremely qualified women. And chances are, if you're in a high-ranking position in government, in corporate life, as a woman, you are probably anywhere between 20 and 150% more qualified than a man who would have held that job because of how difficult career advancement is for women. And yet, ironically, if you get to that level and you're dealing with sexual advancement from superiors, the issue is not just the sensation of losing your sexual agency, which is huge. The issue is not just the socioeconomic peril that you're put in because of it, and the issue is not just the physical threat of having people over-sexualize you against your will. The other issue, obviously, is that you're afraid for your reputation, which is materially harmful to you. That you spend your entire life grinding to working 200, 300, 400% as hard as the men around you. And there are some mediocre-ass men in high-ranking positions. It's very difficult for me to find mediocre women in high-ranking positions of like companies and governments. At the very least, the most evil women in the most evil jobs, at the very least, are extremely intelligent to get there. The only exceptions are like trust fund babies like Meghan McCain, right? Like it's very difficult to be an unqualified woman in a very high value, prestigious job literally outside of media, right? In media, there's any number of things that you can do to get a job that you don't deserve, in my opinion. But and even those cases are the exception, not the rule. So yeah, to get to that point, and because somebody else has decided to over-sexualize you in their head and has decided to make advances on you, and like someone plants a kiss on you in a situation where they should not have, and basically borderline sexually assaults you at the workplace, and one of your primary fears is who saw that and what are they going to say about how I got to the position I got to because this person decided to violate my agency and personal space. Like, how fucked up is that, right? After that, my fears worsened. I came to work nauseous every day. My relationship with the senior team, mostly women, grew hostile after I started speaking up for myself. I was reprimanded and told to get in line by his top aides, but I could no longer ignore it. On September 26, 2018, Chubby September, I sent a mass email informing staff members of my resignation. There is a part of me that will never forgive myself for being a victim for so long, for trying to ignore a behavior that I knew was wrong. The governor exploited my weaknesses, my desire to do good work, and to be respected. I was made to believe this was the world I needed to survive in. It was also normalized, particularly by Melissa DeRosa and other top women behind him. That only now do I realize how insidious his abuse was. After my tweets about the governor in December, 2 women reached out with their own experiences. One described how she lived in constant fear, scared of what would happen to her if she rejected the governor's advances. The other said that she was instructed by the governor to warn staff members who upset him that their jobs could be at risk. Both told me they are too afraid to speak out. and this is the really, 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 really sad part about a he said, she said story. Unfortunately, those women will have to speak out if the governor is going to be taken down, because at the end of the day, like, the counter narrative to this story, I will get into the counter narrative, and I warn you, it's not one that I believe. It's not what I believe, but the counter narrative is literally that, you know, we'll talk more about it later. But the counter narrative is like, basically makes this statement completely fabricated and untrue, which means that, like, we need to see people come out and talk about Cuomo, and I totally believe there are more stories out there, and I really, really, really hope, and I think that's what she's trying to do, is literally say, like, someone has to break the ice on it, and she's willing to be the one to take the fall for it, and I hope she doesn't. She's an extremely talented public servant who has done who has done great work at Empire State Development, and has done a lot of great organizing work in New York City as well. So, you know, I know some will brush off my experience as trivial. We are accustomed to powerful men behaving badly when no one is watching, but what does it say about us when everyone is watching and no one says a thing? Telling my truth is not about seeking revenge. I was proud to work in the Cuomo administration. For so long I had looked up to the governor, but his abusive behavior needs to stop. I am speaking up because I have the privilege to do so when many others do not. No one should have to be defined or destroyed by this kind of sexual harassment, nor should they be re-victimized if they decide to speak their own truth. I hope that sharing my story will clear the path for other women to do the same. Cool. So, I am not qualified to analyze a story for its credibility on its own and out of context. But what I can do is I can place the story in context. Andrew Cuomo is a bully. In fact, you know what? Let's actually pull up an example of Andrew Cuomo engaging in gaslighting publicly. Insincere question. Here it is. Okay. I have the transcript. 32, 34. Okay. Where's the video?
Great. Thank you very much, Pat. And now let's turn to Mr. Rick Cotton, the Executive Director of the Port Authority, which runs... Look, I get the theory on restaurant workers eligible, immune compromised eligible, people with diabetes eligible, obesity, people with asthma eligible.
So this is regarding the call for Governor Cuomo to make restaurant workers eligible for the COVID vaccine.
And it's very easy politically to say, I think the realistic situation is you don't have enough supply for any of these people. You have 7 million people eligible. Well, I think more people should be eligible. You have 7 million people, you only get 300,000 a week. What does it mean? And I get, you know, you have a lot of politicians, and it's everybody stands up and says, I think police should get more. I think fire should get more. I think the restaurant workers should get more. I think child care workers should get more. I think the immunocompromised should get more. Fine.
If you compare people saying that police should get more vaccines versus people saying that restaurant workers should get more vaccines, like, I can't say that a poll would favor restaurant workers over police, but I will say that there is a definite answer. If you're talking about ethical, like proper outcomes and better outcomes in terms of who is more likely to exhibit responsible behavior during COVID, who is more likely to be interacting directly with people, who is more at the forefront of who's more likely to get COVID, really specifically, who's more likely to get COVID despite very responsible COVID practices and prevention practices, as responsible as they can be, restaurant workers are easily winning that discussion.
Tell me who you want to remove from eligibility. You want to add someone? We already don't have enough. Who do you want to remove? Do you want to remove teachers? Police?
Police. Remove police. That's it. I passed by. Jesus Christ. So when I take the ferry into New York City, I walk down 42nd Street or maybe 40th Street. And half the time when I walk past there to Port Authority and I walk down 8th Avenue to get to the Village or to Chelsea or wherever I'm going, I pass by the Hell's Kitchen or the Theater District NYPD precinct. I have passed by on that commute, which I do once every week or 2 weeks. On that commute, I have passed by maybe 40 to 50 police officers total in the time that I passed by. In every time that I passed by that precinct and passed by those cops, the number of cops that I saw wearing a mask, 2. Might be 1, but I am charitably saying 2 because I think there was a second one. But I can't know for sure because it was such a goddamn unicorn. It could literally have been I passed by someone wearing a mask and I looked back to see if anyone was wearing a mask. I saw the same person wearing a mask. I counted it as 2. But let's presume there was a second person. I'm sure there is a second police officer in that precinct who was wearing a mask outside. Now, you can say like it's not as important to wear a mask outside. When you're representing the city and you're setting the example of civic behavior, I think you should probably be held to a higher standard. I hold myself to a higher standard. If I'm not drinking coffee, if I'm not eating something, if I am not like blowing my nose or doing something that requires me to pull down my mask, things that I wouldn't do indoors because I can't, I would step out and do them, I'm wearing my mask outside. Because part of the reason that being outdoors, especially in a place as dense as New York City, part of the reason that you can safely not wear a mask outdoors as an individual is that there are enough people who are paranoid enough to be wearing their masks, right? So like the overall virulence of the virus in New York City is partly because enough people are generally wearing their masks outdoors. That's why protests are generally safe. Cops are not responsible with COVID. At least the NYPD is not. They have never been responsible regarding COVID. They do home invasions, they are in people's homes totally lawfully with probable cause. They're out on the streets. Their exposure is inherently less, or at least it should be on average. As a beat cop, your exposure should be less. You have very little reason to be interfacing regularly with regular human beings and regular New Yorkers during a pandemic. And the interactions that you do have should generally be outdoors. If you're wearing a mask and being responsible, your exposure points to other New Yorkers should be a fraction of what your average restaurant worker has. And yet, police are more eligible for vaccines than restaurant workers, despite being less responsible with COVID restrictions and precautions, being less exposed to other New Yorkers. So let's continue this.
Rick?
Thank you, Governor.
What the hell?
As one might expect,
Eligible. You have 7 million people. You only get 300,000 a week. What does it mean? And it's everybody stands up and says, I think police should get more. I think fire should get more. I think the restaurant work from eligibility. You want to add someone? We already don't have enough. Who do you want to remove? You want to remove teachers? Police?
Yes, cops.
Fire? 65 plus? Who do you want to remove? Oh, no answer.
You see, he says, oh, no answer, because there is an answer. There is an answer, but if he was to ask someone to give him an answer, then he would be accountable to the follow-up. But instead what he does is he pretends there's no answer and then answers based on pretending there's no answer. This is a textbook example of gaslighting, which is you beg the question or in this case, he is begging the question. Technically, he's begging the answer, right? He is setting up a premise of they don't have an answer to this question, and in order so that he can say the next thing.
It's a cheap, insincere discussion. Yeah.
The entire phrase, "it is a cheap, insincere discussion," is entirely centered around the notion that there's no answer to that question. Whom do you want to remove from eligibility? That's why he breezes past police. Remove the police from eligibility. Bam, I just answered your question. The notion that it's a cheap, insincere discussion requires me not to have an answer to that question. I just answered it. What's your follow-up? Why should police be eligible when restaurant workers are not? Restaurant workers are more responsible with code precautions. They have more exposure to other New Yorkers. Give them eligibility. Police are out on the streets. They're less exposed. Most of them don't work indoors for decent portions of the day. Restaurant workers work indoors for 6 out of 8 hours of the day. Give it to restaurant workers. They're more likely to spread the virus to other people if they're exposed, and they're more likely to be exposed to the virus. Give it to restaurant workers. This is a character witness on... this is character evidence on Andrew Cuomo. Ordinarily, a politician who is answering a question in bad faith, which people do a lot, right? They will frame the question, and then they will answer the question without giving somebody else a chance to respond. What they won't do is then demean the question itself. That's a very Trumpian mechanism. And quite frankly, Cuomo was doing it long before Trump existed. It's a cheap, insincere discussion. He is insulting the person for criticizing him. He is like... There is no Democrat in the level of power that they have that is so unbelievably loath to answer critical questions. The closest that you get to someone like Andrew Cuomo and the level of vitriol that he has for people who ask critical questions of him or who oppose him in any way, the closest you get is Barack Obama, who clearly had disdain for a hostile press. But Barack Obama dealt with a really hostile press. Should he have been as critical of the press as he was? Probably not. Right? Should his IRS have been auditing Fox News? Probably not. But that doesn't hold a candle to the level of abusiveness that comes from this man to falsely answer a question on behalf of his opponents in order to frame their discussion as cheap and insincere. Like, this is chief gaslighting tactics. The guy is a bully, and he is an awful, awful person. He is a thug. And I use that term like... I don't know if I should use that term because of the racially charged nature of it, but like, that's the truth. That's who he is. Like, he has turned the New York Democratic Party into his own little mob, and anyone who steps up to him, he intimidates and bullies. He has his staffers go after them, threaten to ruin their lives, threaten to dig up dirt on them. He's got dirt on he compiles dirt on the people he works with, and then threatens to release it. That's what they tried to do with Lindsey Boylan's personnel file. That's what he's trying to do with Ron Kim, accusing him of having inappropriate political donations. And he only does it to people who criticize him. He only does it to people when they come up against him, right? It's very, very, very clear extortion. It's very clear, like, I got dirt on you, and I'm going to release it if you don't do what I want you to. He did it with the IDC, or not specifically that, but the IDC was another experiment on Cuomo's part to create a centrist center-right coalition that would help him protect his power by keeping him less accountable to his left flank, right? Like, this is what he does. He doesn't have an ideology. He doesn't care about improving the lives of people. He is the son of a governor who, whether or not he's a little overrated or isn't, as great as people make him out to be, the guy earned his status, and he was a competent governor, and he was respected, and there are things that he did to earn that respect. Andrew Cuomo is he's the political clout version of a trust fund baby. He inherited so much political power from his father, and he decided, I'm going to make my entire life's work to protect this power. And that's all I'm going to do. I've nothing else, no other ambitions in life. I don't want to make people's lives better. Like, that's who Andrew Cuomo is. So when you show me an accusation that he is a bully, that he gaslights people, that he abuses his power, and that as a man, he uses all of those behavioral traits to sexually harass and make inappropriate sexual advances on women, my propensity is to believe that story. It could not be true. It's possible. Does someone like Lindsey Boylan have anything to gain from criticizing the most powerful person in New York, the most powerful political figure in New York, the leader of the will always hold power Democratic Party in New York? What does she have to gain from taking him on? She has very little to gain and nothing to lose from lying about this shit. She's kissing her Manhattan Borough President race goodbye. I hope she wins. I know she won't. I'll be happy to be wrong. But the absolute firestorm that is about to come at her, that already has come at her, like, God knows what she's dealing with right now. There's a universe where it's possible that Cuomo said, will Boylan be there? Will Boylan be there because he's avoiding her because he's afraid that she's gonna, that she's making inappropriate advances on him? Is it a likely world? I don't think so. I think the character of both of these people is pretty crystal clear. The problem is that narrative is going to be so strong and so compelling to an entire legion of personality cult supporters, personality cultists, who have decided that Andrew Cuomo is the anti-Trump. He's not the anti-Trump. He's the Democratic Trump. That's what he is. And these people have decided we have to defend Andrew Cuomo at all costs. Cult of personality is an awful, awful thing. And I said this about Bernie as well, all right? Listen, if your support of Bernie Sanders was out of like this ridiculous allegiance to him, if you're one of these people who literally came out and said like Elizabeth Warren is as bad as Joe Biden, I had the same criticism of Michael Brooks. That while I sympathize with the notion that like we need to elect a true strong progressive like Bernie Sanders, like where's my map? I did not agree with his tactics of, and you know what? Neither did most of the other Majority Report crew, right? Like, I did not agree with the notion that someone like Elizabeth Warren is an enemy to the Bernie movement. I think that he associated her with the types of Pete Buttigieg, who I think is an actual Trojan horse. But I didn't agree with that, right? But the other issue was like I don't think Brooks was in a cult of personality around Bernie, but I think a lot of people were, where it like we treated political personalities like they're friggin' like sports teams that we choose to support. Like, I've chosen this team and like I will never ever break from it, right? It's really weird. It's cringy as hell. It's counterproductive, and it allows bad people to get away with bad shit. At the very least, in the case of Bernie, at the very least, there's some level of a justification to an overbearing support for him because he represents something that is heretofore unprecedented in American politics. But even in that sense, like, if you contrast the way that someone like Kyle Kulinski talks about Bernie Sanders and the way that someone like Sam Cedar talks about Bernie Sanders, where Sam Cedar is literally like, listen, I support Bernie because he is the best equipped to fight for he's the one most ardently fighting for the policies that I want to see enacted. It's as simple as that. He's a piece of code that purports to get the outcome and the results that I most want. But at the end of the day, like, Elizabeth Warren is much closer to that vision of what I want than someone like even Pete Buttigieg, who I would say either Buttigieg or Kamala Harris, maybe Kamala Harris, or Julian Castro. Julian Castro or Kamala Harris, I would say, is probably the furthest left out of the non-Bernie Warren candidates, and it is a massive gap between her and Elizabeth Warren, right? And there's a pretty big gap between Warren and Sanders in terms of what they represent. But if this is Warren versus Sanders, this is Warren versus Harris, right? And then everybody else is to the right. So I was critical of that cult of personality around Bernie, while acknowledging that, like, yes, Bernie is uniquely better than even Elizabeth Warren when it comes to, like, electing a truly left candidate. Tulsi Gabbard, I'm not including in that equation because Tulsi Gabbard is a complete... I'm glad that we finally understand that all of these people who defended Tulsi finally understand that, like, she's not good. She has always been a Trojan horse. Oh, you know what? This is still whatchamacalliting. Oh, well, chill. Oh, that's the easiest way to do it, actually. I was trying to figure out the most efficient way to fix a fuck up in that. I think that was it. So all that's to say, like, notwithstanding my general tendency to say, you know what, I believe accusers until I have a reason not to. I have plenty of reason to believe Lindsey Boylan, and I will commit to the fact that, like, I believe her accusations, and it's not even just erring on the side of believing her. It's literally like these are some of the most credible allegations I've ever seen leveraged against, especially leveraged against a Democrat. But, like, this is Trump levels of credibility, right? It didn't take much to sell me on these because I knew that this is the person that Andrew Cuomo is. My game just crashed. So that's going to do it for me. I got to teach in 10 minutes. So the thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to log off and prep my lesson. And yeah, have a wonderful day. I will be back. I'm probably going to put this on YouTube, so we'll do the YouTube outro. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for future videos. I don't know how regularly I'm going to be posting content. It's entirely subject to my schedule. I have other things I have to, think about, including, like, my job search and my search for students and my compositional career. But I will post as regularly as I can. In the meantime, I'm going to be streaming live to Twitch much more regularly because that's much easier for me. So if you want to see live content, partake in the chat, insult me, come to twitch.tv/Shantastic93. It's linked down below. Peace. Have a good day. Bye.